Hi everyone, quick Tiger Salamander care video. We'll start with housing. There's two separate housing needs for the Tiger Salamander. One would start with the water dog or tadpole form of them. You would need a setup similar to an axolotl, below 72 degrees, about 8 inches of water, and low circulation. They can handle more circulation than the axolotls as water dogs, but they prefer less, just like the axolotls. Then development. This would be a third stage even to their housing needs. Development tank will be a lot similar to your water dog tank. It can even be the same tank, but you'll need the addition of a place to get up out of the water, as well as a shallow spot. They need still to be able to submerge, but providing rocks or something for them to get up onto where they're still covered over their back, and then as well as places to get up completely out of the water are great for adaptation and metamorphosis. Also, added to your water dog tank, if it's not already there, plenty of plants to climb on. So that's a water dog setup. I also have a video showing a water dog setup. For a Tiger Salamander setup, you probably hear everywhere, all over these amphibian pages, bioactive substrate. I'll try to do a video of what a bioactive substrate is, but Tiger Salamanders, as well as almost every terrestrial amphibian, prefer bioactive substrate. That's basically a substrate consisting of organic materials and insects that will help maintain the bioactivity of the substrate. Live plants are also a part of this. Without all of them combined, you technically do not have bioactive substrate. You can have mimicked biological substrate, which would be eco-earth or the coconut bark, and that's great, but it's technically not bioactive. But there's a little bit on that. You need bioactive substrate and a water feature that they can still submerge in. They don't live in the water after they've become a Tiger Salamander, but I haven't owned a Tiger Salamander yet that didn't visit its water dish and leave tons of dirt in it every night. So definitely still a water dish they can submerge in. With that water dish, if you get a big water dish like I have in this tank, you need rocks inside that water dish that they can set on, just like if they were developing into a Tiger Salamander from a water dog. They will want rocks or things to climb up on. Makes it easier for them to get out of the water. The water dish needs to be easy to get in and out of. Rule of thumb for that is basically no ledges, no immediate ledges that are higher than their head width. They can easily climb up and over anything the width of their head, and we'll figure it out pretty simply. But when it gets bigger than that, sometimes our little salamanders get lost. Isn't exactly true for frogs. Of course, the hopping frogs and toads can get in and out of the water pretty easily. But that's the other side of amphibians. With your salamanders, handling. Good tip for handling: wash your hands. Don't use soap within 2 hours of handling your salamanders. If you are washing your hands and haven't used soap for a few hours and you're getting ready to handle your salamanders, probably a good idea to maybe put a slimy drop of dechlorinator on your hands. Just make sure there's no biological or chemical leftovers or heavy metals in your skin that could be detrimental to your salamander. And it also reduces the oil output of your skin for a few hours. So getting a little dechlorinator on your hands is definitely good for your salamander. Whether or not it can be bad for you, I'm not sure. Ask your doctor. Aside from handling, space in said enclosure for a water dog and a Tiger Salamander. Basically, for one, you want about a 20 gallons of space. There are smaller tiger salamanders. Like I even have here contrast between my 13 and a half inch female and all of my little guys here that have yet to be discerned. But for space, I'd go 10-gallon minimum, but that's a temporary setup. They can get commonly 8 to 10 inches, and that's as long as the 10-gallon is wide. So a 10-gallon's okay for one, but I would consider it a temporary setup. Your salamander will be much happier in a 20 wide, 30 wide, larger, or an exoterra. But honestly, in Squarespace, a lot of those extra terras that people keep their tiger salamanders in are only about the square footage of a 10-gallon. 10 wide, not 10 tall, like this. Adequate space for a smaller tiger salamander or raising your water dog. If you want them to be larger, if you want them to get bigger, tank space will dictate that, as well as allowing them to stay a water dog as long as possible. If they can develop more energy to growth early on than metamorphosis, you will end up with a much larger tiger salamander. I just recently proven this with Big Brooke, my big girl. She has just metamorphosis at 15 months old and is just now going into her terrestrial tank today, as well as these guys. They're at the same stage in metamorphosis, and she is easily 4 times as heavy as them. So just a little bit of proof to my statement there. So we've covered the enclosure. Let's go into feeding. Feeding your tiger salamander. As a water dog, they will eat everything from feeder guppies. Stay away from goldfish. Stay away from shiner minnows. These produce a chemical that inhibits their ability to maintain vitamin D and absorb calcium. So goldfish and minnows, bad for reptiles and amphibians in general. Not sure on the fish side of that if they can be bad for predatory fish. I've never heard of any detriment to predatory fish, but they are bad for your reptiles and amphibians. So that's a not food. Water dogs love feeder guppies though. Any live bearer like mollies or platies, guppies, they're usually safe. It's mostly the egg-bearing minnows and carp-like goldfish that are a problem. But yeah, live feeder guppies, worms are number one. Worms are number one on the list in everyone's book is big, fat Canadian night crawlers. You can also gut load your worms. A little bit about that. You put collard greens and kale. These are the highest nutrition greens that the worms will actually ingest. Collard greens and kale dusted with your rectical. I prefer gut loading and absorption to dusting the food directly. It's a much better method of getting your calcium and vitamin supplements to your amphibians. I'm not saying this for reptiles. For your reptiles, do the dusting. It's good, they need it. But for your amphibians, they take in more from their environment and their natural diet than they would from dusted crickets or dusted worms, especially with the slime the worms produce. Their body doesn't digest the slime, it just deals with it. So they don't take in a lot of the dusted nutrients. So I prefer gut load. Your kale, collard greens, high nutrition greens, even green beans for gut loading. I like those, but they're lower nutrition. Lima beans, corn, carrots is really good. Corn's not the best, but it gets them eating other foods. Then it gets the crickets and worms and stuff eating the veggies. It's really enticing to them for some reason. I also gut load dubia roaches and crickets for the tiger salamanders. However, your water dogs in their aquatic state will have trouble with these. So guppies and worms are really your best bet with a water dog. After they're out of the water dog state in a tiger salamander, their diet broadens. If they're skinny and you want to bring the weight up and think they need something more fatty, you can feed them pinkies. Pinkies are pre-gut loaded with all the fats and nutrients from their mama's milk. So if you raise your own mice and breed your own pinkies for your reptiles or amphibians, you can essentially gut load the pinkies with any vitamins and nutrients you want. But I don't want to get into that too detailed. But yeah, pinkies for bringing up weight, or pinkies are also okay for water dogs. It'll help bring up the size ultimately of your Tiger Salamander, I found out. But don't overdo the pinkies. Pinkies are not their staple food source. Just pinkies will cause liver and kidney damage, as well as obesity, which leads to liver and kidney damage. So not just pinkies. They need the worms or crickets and dubia roaches, like I said, gut loaded as opposed to dusted. Going along with the gut loading and dusting, cuttle bones in their water or cuttle bone in their substrate, their bioactive substrate, spread out across the bottom before you put the substrate in, of course, is a good way to get calcium to your amphibian in supplemental amounts. They're absorbing it through their skin,